What if the man you were meant to marry felt more like a stranger carved from stone than a husband waiting to love you? The Wyoming wind howled across the plains as if it wanted to warn Evelyn Grace to turn back while she still could. At 18, she sat stiff in the rattling stagecoach, her hands shaking inside her thin gloves. 3 long days on the trail had covered her gray traveling dress in dust and robbed her lungs of clean air. Everything she had known in the East felt a world away now. Her father had told her this marriage would save her. A safe future, he said. A wealthy rancher, he said. A home, a husband, a new life. But as the stagecoach rolled up the last rise and Cedar Creek came into view, fear twisted deep inside her. The town was nothing like she imagined. Instead of charm or warmth, it looked like a wound in the middle of a wide, empty land. A single dirt road stretched between plain wooden buildings. A general store. A saloon whose doors swung weakly in the wind. A blacksmith shop. A lonely church standing straight but sad. People stepped out to stare. Men with dust on their hats. Women with worn dresses. Hard eyes. Tight mouths. Everyone watching the new girl. The mail-order bride. Evelyn felt smaller with every second. When the coach jerked to a stop, she hesitated at the door. Silas, the driver, cleared his throat. "Best get on out, miss. He'll be waitin'." Her boots touched the dirt, and she felt the whole street go silent. Then she saw him. Jebidiah Claymore stood apart from the crowd, tall and unmovable like he'd grown from the earth itself. His shoulders were broad, his shirt dark and plain, his boots scuffed. His hat shadowed most of his face, but what she could see matched the photograph she kept tucked in her bag. Sharp jaw, hard eyes. No smile. He didn't come to her. He didn't soften. He didn't offer a welcome. He simply waited. Evelyn forced her feet forward, each step heavy. Her bonnet felt too tight, her breath too thin. "Mr. Claymore," she whispered, her voice shaking. He touched the brim of his hat. "Miss Grace, was the journey satisfactory?" It was a cold question, a practical one. Not a groom's welcome, not a husband's warmth. "It was long," she said softly. His eyes moved over her politely, distant, like he was studying a piece of land instead of a girl. It made her stomach twist with shame. Was this all she was to him? A deal? A duty? Something purchased? "My trunk," she began. "Silas will load it," he said, turning away without waiting for her words. He led her to a buckboard wagon and helped her climb up with a hand rough from years on the land. His touch was firm but cold. The brief contact sent a strange shiver through her. Not fear, not comfort, something in between. The ride out of town was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like it belonged to someone who had lived with it too long. The land stretched endlessly around them. Rolling brown hills, sagebrush, cattle moving slow beneath the sky. This wasn't the home she expected. This was a kingdom of loneliness ruled by the man sitting beside her. She studied him quietly. His jaw was tight, his brow slightly drawn. He didn't look angry. He looked distant, guarded, like someone used to carrying a weight no one else could see. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the ranch. Stone Creek Ranch. It rose from the valley below. Strong, dark timber walls and a roof that looked built to stand against storms. Big, solid barns surrounded it. Corrals, fences, a yard swept clean but empty of any softness or charm. No flowers, no curtains, no sign that a woman had ever lived here. Jebidiah brought the wagon to a stop. Before Evelyn could gather her breath, he said quietly, "We'll be married in the morning. Justice of the peace will ride out. You can rest today." The words hit her like a stone. No courtship, no gentle beginning, no time to breathe, just a marriage. He helped her down, his grip strong but emotionless, and led her inside. The house matched him. Tall, quiet, cold. A big fireplace sat in the center of the main room, stones blackened by years of use. Heavy furniture filled the space. Dark wood, no pictures, no lace, no softness at all. "Your room is upstairs. First door on the right," he said. Then, almost like he couldn't wait to escape the air between them, he walked away. Alone, Evelyn stared at the room around her. The silence pressed against her ears. The scent of leather and wood smoke filled her lungs. The fear inside her grew. Upstairs, her room was plain. A sturdy bed, a quilt, a washstand, a wardrobe, a window showing miles of empty land. Nothing more. When Jebidiah brought her trunk to the door, he didn't step inside. He didn't smile. He didn't reassure her. "Rest," he said simply. Then he was gone again. Evelyn stood at the window, watching the wind shove the tall grass into waves. Her hands shook. Her throat tightened. Tears filled her eyes, but she fought them back. She had left home to avoid being a burden, to give her father one less mouth to feed, to find safety. But standing in this cold, echoing house, married tomorrow to a man who didn't know her name beyond a contract. Was this safety? Or had she stepped into a life even lonelier than the one she left behind? The first tear slipped down her cheek. She brushed it away. There would be no crying now. Not yet. Out here in the wild land, tears were a weakness she couldn't afford. But deep down, she felt the truth settle heavy in her chest. Tomorrow she would marry Jebidiah Claymore. And tonight, she understood what it truly meant to be alone in the world. What happens when a wedding vow feels less like a promise and more like stepping into a storm you can't escape? The morning of the wedding came cold and gray. Evelyn barely slept. Her body felt heavy, her stomach tight with fear. When Martha, the foreman's wife, arrived to help her dress, she offered a kind smile. But even that couldn't calm the trembling in Evelyn's hands. The ceremony was held in the main room of the ranch house. No flowers, no music, no warmth. Just the justice of the peace, Eli and Martha as witnesses, and the sound of the wind pushing against the windows. Evelyn stood beside Jebidiah, her small hand in his large, calloused one. His grip was steady, but there was no tenderness in it. Her vows shook as she spoke them. His didn't. His words were strong, firm, final, like everything else about him. When the justice pronounced them husband and wife, Jebidiah did not lean in for a kiss. He simply nodded once and released her hand, a business agreement sealed. Nothing more. The witnesses did not stay long. The moment the horses' hooves faded from the yard, the house felt bigger and colder than before. At supper, Evelyn tried to eat, but the stew had no taste. She kept her eyes on her bowl, afraid to meet his gaze, afraid not to. Jebidiah ate quietly, every move neat and controlled, as if he was afraid to disturb the silence. When he stood, she stood too. "It is late," he said simply. Her heart dropped. She followed him up the stairs, each step sounding too loud in the still house. He didn't take her to the guest room where she slept last night. He opened the door to his own bedroom. The lantern light flickered across the large bed, the heavy quilt, the plain walls. Her chest tightened. He set the lantern down and spoke without looking at her. "I'll give you a moment." Then he left. Evelyn's breath shook. Her hands trembled as she unbuttoned her dress. She changed into the nightgown her mother packed for her, the soft cotton feeling far too thin, too delicate. She sat on the bed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break. This was the life she came for. This was the duty expected of her. She tried to steady her breathing, but tears blurred her vision. She wiped them fast, but they kept coming. She pressed her palms to her eyes. Not here. Not now. Not your wedding night. But her body didn't listen. When the door opened, she froze. Jebidiah stepped inside. He had taken off his gun belt and outer shirt. The sight of him, tall, broad, powerful, made her chest tighten even more. He closed the door, and the soft click sounded like a lock closing over her future. He didn't say a word. He simply looked at her, and she broke. Her first tear fell, then another. She turned her face away, trying to hide it, but the sob escaped her throat before she could stop it. She cried. She cried like the scared girl she still was. At 18, she cried on her wedding night. For a moment, nothing happened. The house was so quiet she could hear the wind outside and the unsteady rhythm of her own breaths. Then the mattress dipped as he stepped closer, but stopped. He froze. She dared to lift her eyes. He wasn't angry. He wasn't impatient. He looked lost, confused, like he had walked into a world he didn't know how to navigate. He lowered his gaze. His jaw tightened. His breath came slow and heavy. He dragged a hand over his face, as if trying to wipe away something he didn't understand. "There is no need for that," he said softly. His voice wasn't cold now. It was rough, almost broken. He stepped away from the bed, picked up a blanket, a pillow, walked to the far corner of the room, and laid himself a bed on the floor. When he blew out the lantern, the darkness wrapped around them, thick and quiet. She lay alone in the big marriage bed, her breath shivering in her chest. He lay on the floor, his back to her, a solid shadow in the dim moonlight. He didn't touch her. He didn't speak. He didn't claim what the law said was his. He chose not to, and that choice settled deep in her heart like a seed she didn't yet know how to name. The next morning, he was gone before she woke. The fire downstairs was burning strong. A pot of coffee warmed on the stove. It wasn't affection, but it was something. Days passed. Jebidiah left early and worked hard on the ranch from dawn to dusk. Evelyn tried to keep the house running, but the stove fought her. The bread didn't rise, and the stew came out thin. Still, he never complained. He ate everything she cooked, silent as always. When they rode into town together for supplies, the stares burned hot on her skin. Whispers followed them. "There's Claymore's little bride, bought and paid for." It stung, but she kept her head high. Inside the general store, a tall, sturdy woman approached her. Margaret Thornton. A rancher's wife. Weathered, strong, honest eyes. "Don't let them get to you," Margaret said. "Folks like to talk. They don't know you yet." Evelyn nodded shyly. "Learn to stand on your own 2 feet," Margaret added. "This land eats the weak. Better to meet it head on." Quote. Those words stayed with Evelyn as they returned home. Something inside her shifted. The cold fear in her chest loosened a little. She wasn't just Claymore's bride. She was here, and she had to learn to live this new life. She tried again with the bread. It rose this time. She made stew thicker and richer. Jebidiah paused after tasting the first bite. He didn't say anything, but the flicker of surprise in his eyes felt like a small victory. Still, nights were quiet. He lay on the floor. She lay in the bed. A great empty space between them. Then came the day she tried to ride one of the mares alone. She fell. Hard. The breath knocked out of her. Dust on her dress. Frustration burning hot in her chest. Jebidiah strode toward her, his face thunderous. "What were you doing?" he demanded. "I want to learn to ride," she said, trying to steady her voice. He stared for a long moment. Instead of scolding her, he reached down, lifted her to her feet with surprising gentleness and said, "Not on that horse, and not without me." Quote. The next morning, he brought out a calm old gelding named Patches and taught her step by step. His voice stayed low, his instructions clear, his hand steady on hers when she needed help. When she finally rode a straight line, he gave a slow nod of approval. A small gesture, but one that warmed her chest more than any fire. Later, at the fire, she gathered her courage. "Teach me to shoot," she said. He hesitated, then nodded. And in the quiet open land behind the barn, he stood close behind her, guiding her hands, his breath warm near her ear, his voice calm. "Breathe out. Squeeze. Don't pull." She hit the can on the fence. His eyes held something new, respect. A bridge had begun to form between them, a slow, quiet one, a fragile one. But one they both needed. What if the moment that finally brings two hearts together is the same moment the whole world tries to tear them apart? The change between Evelyn and Jebidiah came quietly at first. A soft word here, a steady look there, a warm cup of coffee left for her in the morning. A small smile she caught on his face when she guided Patches down the creek trail without wobbling. Their silence began to feel less empty, less cold, more shared. But trouble was already on its way. It arrived in the form of a polished black carriage, rolling into Cedar Creek like a vulture swooping down from the sky. Matthew Monroe, a smooth-talking man from the East, dressed in a fine suit that didn't belong anywhere in Wyoming. He introduced himself to the townsfolk as a man wronged, a man cheated, a man who claimed Evelyn had been promised to him instead. His lies spread through the town like fire through dry brush. She belonged to me. Her family made a bargain. She ran off with a rich cowboy instead. She broke her duty as a woman. Whispers turned into stares. Stares turned into glares. And every glare found its way to Evelyn the next time she went into town. Mrs. Miller ignored her completely. Mrs. Blackwood stared at her like she was something rotten. Even the storekeeper's wife hesitated before handing her a sack of flour, as if touching her might stain her fingers. By the time Evelyn stepped back onto the wagon beside Eli, her chest felt tight enough to break. But she didn't cry. She didn't bow her head. Margaret Thornton found her at the creek behind the ranch later that day. "There's poison in town," Margaret said firmly, "and that man Monroe is pouring it with both hands." But you listen to me. People only believe lies when they don't know the truth. And you, girl, you're stronger than you think. That night, Evelyn told Jebidiah everything. Who Matthew really was, the debts her family faced back home, the fear she had felt even as a child whenever Matthew entered the room. Jebidiah didn't interrupt. He didn't question her, didn't ask for proof. He believed her immediately. "He won't take you," Jeb said, his jaw tight, his eyes burning like fire. "He won't speak your name again." But Matthew Monroe had no intention of giving up. 2 days later, a threatening legal letter arrived from a lawyer in Cheyenne. A letter claiming Evelyn was stolen, that Jebidiah had tricked her family, that the marriage should be annulled. It wasn't just a letter. It was a warning. Matthew wanted a war. Jebidiah held the letter in his hands for a long time. His silence was different now, sharp, dangerous. The next blow came just before sundown. A rider delivered a message. Matthew Monroe demanded a meeting with Jebidiah at the northern edge of the property. At moonrise, at the old cottonwood tree. Evelyn's heart dropped. "It's a trap," she whispered, her voice shaking. "It's a trap I must face," Jebidiah said. "This ends tonight." She grabbed his arm, tears burning at the corners of her eyes. "I can't lose you." He cupped her face for the first time, his thumb brushing her cheek with a gentleness she had never felt from him before. "You won't," he said, "but stay inside. Lock the door." Then he kissed her, quick but full of fear and something deeper, before leaving. The house felt too quiet, too big, too hollow without him. She tried to wait. She couldn't. She grabbed the rifle he taught her to use, the one that no longer felt heavy in her hands, loaded it, saddled a dark mare instead of Patches, and rode out through the backfields hidden by the hills. The moon was bright, the snow glowing silver. She crept to the top of a ridge overlooking the cottonwood. Below, Jebidiah sat on his horse, still as stone. Matthew paced nearby, his body language sharp and ugly. A third man waited with a rifle at his side. Then Matthew lifted a pistol, not pointing, but showing, threatening. A final shove. Evelyn didn't think. She aimed for the thick branch above Matthew's head, remembered Jeb's voice in her mind. "Breathe out. Squeeze." She squeezed. The shot cracked through the cold night. The bullet struck the branch. A heavy load of snow collapsed onto Matthew, startling his horse and sending him tumbling. His pistol flew into the snow. Evelyn stood on the ridge in plain sight, rifle still raised. Matthew stared at her, shocked, furious. He didn't ride back toward Jebidiah. He rode away. fast. His hired man scrambling after him. Jebidiah dismounted slowly. Then he walked toward her, each step heavy, each breath visible in the cold night air. She stood there shaking, unsure if she had done right or terribly wrong, but when he reached her, he didn't shout, didn't scold, didn't ask why she disobeyed. He pulled her into his arms so hard she gasped. "I thought I lost you," he said, his voice breaking in a way she had never heard before. Her breath caught as he lifted her face, his hands warm against her cold cheeks. "And when I saw him pull that pistol," he whispered, "I knew I couldn't breathe in a world without you." Her tears fell fast. "Jeb." He shook his head slowly. "That first night," he said, voice low and raw, "you cried because you were alone. Tonight I'm the one who can't imagine losing you. I choose you, Evelyn. Not as part of a bargain, not because I paid, not because I needed a wife." He kissed her forehead gently. "I choose you because I love you." She choked on a breath. "Do you choose me?" he asked softly. Her heart answered before her voice did. "I do," she whispered. "I choose you." Quote. He kissed her then, slow, sure, full of every emotion he had held back for so long. The moon lit the frozen field around them, the snow glowed, the air stilled, and for the first time since she came west, Evelyn felt the world settle into place. She was not the frightened girl who had cried on her wedding night. She was Jebidiah Claymore's wife, truly, fully, forever.